Hello everyone, and welcome to our Circle and Salve Women. For today's video, I'm going to reflect on Plato's Apology of Socrates. And I know I'm really odd at correlating things or reflecting on something and in a way to analogize my life with things I've learned in the past. And this time I'm going to connect it with speaking to a 5-year-old. Some of you 6, some of you who have already ran into it at the age of 4 with a kid who, if you're driving with them or you're walking with them, you know that they have at least approached you with the many whys. I call it whying instead of whining. And I have to connect this with really the understanding of where Socrates was. Now, you have to understand that Plato was a student of Socrates, who then became basically a teacher or just a leader for Aristotle. And so you can see really how it's transpired into all of these people of wisdom who have been deemed of wisdom. You're going to find out that Socrates was really humbly saying that he had not gained, he doesn't see himself as having wisdom, and therefore he seeks the truth and he seeks for understanding and so forth. But people who we deem in our past as having wisdom typically are those who have always been seeking truth, and they are not arrogantly going around saying, yeah, I know everything. And if you really understand the difference, or seek difference between a philosopher and philosophist, philosophers are always seeking truth, always seeking understanding. And so we have considered Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, with many others, as philosophers because they have always questioned the why. And so I always relate that to like a 5-year-old, and having my kids and having gone through it several times in my life, where you're just driving, trying to find some peace, and then all of a sudden you get this mommy, and you'll have questions like, why is the sky blue? Why do I have to be good? Why do I have to put on my seatbelt? Why is it important to do the right thing? And they're asking you things that at that age, they're really trying to seek some truth, some wisdom from you. And it can be a very trying situation, because you don't always want to explain why. You just want people to do as you say and just follow along. And I truly believe in just listening or reading, because when I read, in my mind, I'm always thinking I can hear the person speaking, to really bring myself in there. But just listening in the words of Socrates that had been quoted or written by Plato, it's very interesting to really break it down. And understanding that sometimes when we apologize, and this is considered an apology, I think of my 5-year-old, that's like, or my 5-year-olds throughout life, that when they apologize, they're really thinking, well, what am I apologizing for? Am I apologizing for you? Or am I apologizing for myself? Am I apologizing for the sake of peace so I don't get in trouble and we just continue forth and just pretend that I was sorry? And so I have to connect, not because I don't find Socrates a sagacious person, an erudite, or by any means of that, but really more of, when a person asks why, you have to then ask yourself, why was he imprisoned at the age of 70 and then sentenced to death? So we're going to break this down today, and let's see where this goes, just to really make you understand that in life, when you ask why, sometimes you get in trouble for it. And so Socrates begins with addressing the court, and I can only imagine that everyone has shown up because he has had so many followers, and also he's had many people against him. He has probably acquired so many years of times where he questioned, and so therefore he might have had some people who he empowered, and then there were people that he really angered, and so everyone probably showed up. All these men that are listening in to him pleading for his sentence, for his sentence to be light. Now, this time they had not actually sentenced him to death yet. He is there just pleading for his case. And So he starts off by addressing it, and he's really saying, you know what, I don't have wisdom. I'm really just seeking truth, and speak the truth. And so if that is what I am brought here for, just understand that you guys, and I want to quote hopefully here and there little things that was said, but you are saying that I have caused injustice, that I am meddlesome, that I question, and making weaker speech the stronger. And when I stop and think about that and reflect on that, it's like, well, wait a minute. He is basically stating before the court and addressing the court and all those that are listening that, I'm over here pleading my life or pleading my case as I have been imprisoned for basically just being a person who has caused some different light other than what people consider to be peaceful. And peaceful meaning don't question, just believe what I tell you. And I have the power to tell you what is true, and so therefore you just follow along. And so he's just saying, okay, I was considered to be meddlesome, and that I am promoting some form of injustice by actually triggering perhaps some egos, right? Or just triggering some thoughts to go, but why? But why? But why? And so if you've ever ridden a car with a 5-year-old, sometimes your answer is because it is what it is, okay? And at this time, you're not at that age to understand it yet. But again, I have bring to you that Socrates is 70 years old when he is brought before the court. And he's got these younger people who have had the power to really have the fate, holds his fate of whether or not he is going to be sentenced to death. And so he's addressing them. And so anytime that you've read this, you have to understand that, yes, it's been entitled Apology, but he's basically really addressing it in a means to go, here's what you claim of me, but here's what I really think is happening here. And so he brings up that even a father of two when I asked him, who would you hire if you had to give them money and hire someone to give tutelage to your 2 younger sons, who would you hire as someone you deem to have wisdom? And this father says Evanus. And again, forgive me if I'm saying the names incorrectly or pronounce them incorrectly, but he is stating that even a father who would obviously want some best tutelage for his sons to have great wisdom or to be passed on great wisdom would hire someone else by the name of Evanus. I'm not Evanus, And then he continues on with that. And so he's saying, what he does not know, he really supposes he does not know. And yet he addresses Meletus, and mainly the person who has really imprisoned him and had the power to imprison him, and with all the others that have had the power to do so. He's suggesting, okay, you're at that age now where you now have the power to do so, and you have put me here, but really isn't it because I have questioned you and I have questioned others, and those who are really the cause for me to be in prison? Isn't it because I questioned, and then because I questioned and you didn't have an answer, that now I'm being considered to be meddlesome? And it's interesting because he really questions but gets no answers from those he questions. And he states this, and I write this out in my article, where he's like, those of you, when I questioned people who wrote poetry and spoke of them, and I was really drawn to go, okay, give me some answers. What did you mean by this when you wrote this, when you spoke of this? And he addresses everyone in the courts to say, you guys would have a better answer, I trust me on this, than those people who have written them. They didn't have an answer to my questions. And so you have to think to yourself, when when you are being questioned in life and you get angered because you somehow are being questioned for something that someone else should already know, and I know that I've written an article in the past of why ask why, it really pushes you to think about your thinking, right? That metacognition, which I'll be writing about here in another time. And so it can quite be causing an antagonizing feeling to go, how do I address this? Why can't you just trust what I say? But with Socrates as a philosopher, he is saying, hold on, you are suggesting this to be true. And all I'm asking is for you to explain to me or prove to me why indeed it is true. So he gets put in prison for this. Now, you have to think to yourself, based off of our First Amendment of free speech, we have to be very grateful that all these people who question now and who, are on social media and always asking, and then having people behind them to go, and really empower them even more to question and dig deeper. You have to imagine Socrates being like the frontliner of this and empowering other people to go, give me an answer. And you have Plato, who has been also deemed to be a great philosopher, and then Aristotle. You can only imagine that these people were considered to be the icebreakers of silence in a room, where they were the ones to go, well, hold on, I do have a question. And you can only imagine adults just rolling their eyes going, oh my goodness, here comes Socrates again with his questions. He shows up to ask in front of everybody else, and then he's got other students who then start to follow. So he is basically disturbing the peace, essentially, from what you can gather from this apology is like, so I am here being tried because I have created injustice by disturbing the peace, only because I have asked why, and for you to really explain to me why. And so whenever you're in the car, you're ever walking with a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or perhaps a 4-year-old, and they're asking you why, and you're starting to feel a little bit aggravated and not knowing how to keep asking, because it's that metacognitive piece where they are really making you go, but explain to me why. And then you give an answer, but okay, then explain to me that. Give me the answer to that one, why. And so this is what's happening in Socrates' world. And so several of us who sometimes get frustrated, and I see this in my students, where sometimes if they have a question and it's hard for them to answer and they cannot find an answer, they really express it in different ways, whether they just silence themselves, whether they never ask again, and then you have to prompt them to, feel free to ask again if you do, or drop me a note on my Dropbox, and get some extra help and so forth. Some of them closes in because if you are in a world where you're always being told to just be quiet about it, don't ask anymore, and you are being silenced, you can only imagine how many Socrates of us in our lives reflectively have then decided better not to ask, better to just not get in trouble because I'm asking again. And there are the eyeball rollers, right? And where you're like, oh my goodness, here's this person again asking yet another question and another question. And as a teacher, you have got to tell yourself, boy, I know that this person is going to have another question. And the only thing that you can do in a classroom is by stating, okay, that's a great question. Why don't you go ahead and drop me a note, and I would be more than happy to answer that later. But right now, let's focus in on the subject matter, which is great. But when you're in a public setting and you are all proud about what you're talking about, you're owning it, and you're saying this is true, and you've got Socrates and his followers going, hold on 1 second, I have a question. And you know that these are the ones that show up, and your heart starts to palpitate because here they come again. And they're going to be questioning my very truth that I have owned, and they're going to make people go, well, wait a minute. All of a sudden, you are being questioned. And, to me, that is standing outside of the box, right? Or stepping outside of the box, not being fickle, not being so quick to believe what everybody else is saying, because you really have to dig into your own truth. And so Socrates had an opportunity to plead his case, and he could have begged, and like he stated, I'm not going to beg. You could have asked many people who are here right now to speak on my behalf, and yet you have the power to do so, yet you're not asking anyone. I also have 3 sons who could speak on my behalf, but I have made sure, and without him stating it, but indirectly as a father figure protecting them, and then not having them involve themselves in any of this. So he's saying there's a lot of people here who could speak on my behalf, but you're not asking them to, and And then again, indirectly implying that we know why, right? It's because you just find me perhaps annoying. You find me someone who has questioned your truth. And so that because you aren't able to give me an answer, or anyone else who has then been being questioned, has questioned you, because you can't give them answer, all of a sudden I'm at fault. All of a sudden you're imprisoning me. And at the end, he is the piece that I really feel that that was a turning point, because he's pleading his case, but by the time at the end, he has caused even more anger. I'm sure Meletus and all those other people that had the power to decide his fate were hoping that he would come in and be apologetic and be very sorry for his actions, and please don't, sentence me to death, and I'm so sorry, but he didn't. He came in there and, with his chin up, and he spoke, I'm sure with eloquence, and you can read it, and I believe it's like over 20 pages, and all the way to where he finally gives his last words before he is then taken away. And he is, by the time that he is sentenced, they not only sentence him to death, and now he has an opportunity again to go, okay, what type of sentencing would you actually want here? He's been sentenced as guilty, right? Now what kind of, and he continues to go, I really have not asked anyone you've not asked anyone to defend me, and it's okay, here I am speaking on my behalf, and this is where I stand, and I am not going to beg. And so at the end, they sentence him to death, and they give him, it doesn't state it there, but they give him hemlock as a poison to drink, and so he, falls to his death by being forced to drink this hemlock poison. And again, that's not stated in the very last of his apologies, but when they do sentence him to death, he addresses the court one last time, and he's like, well, who's the better? I'm going to meet some really awesome people where I'm going. The ones who have questioned, the ones who have really sought for truth and have really asked for truth. And not only have they done that, but they have stood by it, so that they also were, fell to their death, or were then found death, having still asked for truth and having been seeking for truth. I'm looking forward to meeting those people. And he's like, who's the lucky one, getting to stay here with you guys who are just so quick to just throw people in prison, and then just to give people a death sentence, and then just to rid of them, just to silence them, you evil ones, right? And so I believe he used the word evil. He didn't say evil ones, but I believe he did use the word evil at the end, where it's basically stating that where I'm going is a better place than staying here with all of you who pretend to know so much and yet know so little, and are the ones who are trying to silence everyone else who wants to question, who wants to ask. And that, to me, is a very powerful, reflective moment, because I have to ask myself, no matter how aggravating it can be, when a child asks, this is for you to go, hold on. They have a question that they would like answered. In the best way that I've learned to, as I grow and develop as an adult, as a teacher, as a person, as a parent, is I'll say, good question, and here's my answer to that. And yes, to be human, sometimes it can really put you in a situation where you don't have an answer, and it's okay to say that as well, because at the end of it all, really all arrogance and ego set aside, we're all still trying to figure out life. We're all still trying to figure out what each of our purpose is, and that what we are trying to do is do it right and live a righteous life. And yes, sometimes we have to be reminded of what it is that or what direction we need to take. And it's good for people to question our actions, but it doesn't always feel right. And sometimes, yes, we do take offense, as Meletus and those who had the power to do something other than put Socrates in prison and then sentence him to death, by poison at the very end. They had the power, and even Socrates said, you know, we all know you have the power to just let me go, and yet obviously you want to rid of me, and this is what it is. This is my fate, and I still stand by where, you know, I continue to be who I am, not going to basically change it because you guys are in the wrong. I'm in the right for asking. Again, he's being very indirect in many cases, but for those who were listening in that room, and imagine for this apology to have been copied, for us to read over and over. It's empowering more than just Plato. It's empowering more than just Aristotle. It has lived through to make us really go, okay, why not ask why in some cases where you're just trying to seek truth, you know, and in difference to, yes, this is the law, this is what's right, this is what we should abide by because it keeps everyone safe. But if someone is claiming something to be true and you're not certain, why is it wrong to ask? And there goes our free speech, and that we should be grateful to have, because it's important to not be so fickle, right? To not really follow through all the time what someone just tells us. We have to go, okay, there are some things that are point blank true and should be followed. And there's many things that we should go, but why? And then please tell me, so that then I can seek some understanding for my own growth, for my own development, for my own maturity, for my own journey in life, to do what I feel needs to be done right. So in the words of my mother, God bless us all, enjoyed reading Socrates again. And hopefully, if you read it, you'll find some more meaning and truth into what I've stated here. And if you have your own questions, then that's what we do, right? We keep seeking for your own understanding and your own truth. But if I have driven you to look it over yourself, then I really feel that it's a good thing to have that pushed on to others, so that you can then be empowered to go, okay, someone died because they were asking. And is that okay? That is for you to decide. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next time.